Dr. Dondra Sechrist, welcome to the Star Coach Show.
Thank you.
I have been looking forward to having you on the show. Um, and everybody who's listening, when you think about coaching and when you think about what coaching brings forward, sometimes it's really helpful to talk to people who are getting coached and exploring that. So, Dondra was kind enough to say, we've been working together for a while. Why don't I share what this experience has been like for me, how, as a leader, I use that? And that's what we're going to be diving into in just a minute. Now, before we get started with me telling you more about Dondra, who she is, the great work that she does, I just want to take a moment to remind you wherever you're listening to this, whether you are on one of the many platforms that the Star Coach Show is on, or whether you're watching us on YouTube, and if you're watching us, hello, be sure to subscribe. So take a moment, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a minute of the content that we offer here at the Star Coach Show. And leave a comment. Dondra would love to know how what she's sharing impact you, how that impacts you, what you're taking away, maybe even how you as a leader can use some of the concepts that we're going to be talking about. So, with that, let's talk a little bit about my fantastic guest. Dr. Dondra Sechrist is the Dean for the School of Health Professionals at Texas Tech University Health Science Center. Say that quickly 5 times. But Dondra had, when she became, now, how long have you been the dean there, Dondra?
A little over 4 years.
Yeah. And so you knew when you were taking that role on after you'd done all these. I mean, you're a tenured university distinguished professor. You teach in the post-professional occupational therapy doctorate program. I know we've talked about whether, that's one of the things that we sort of talk about is where all your energy goes and where you put that. But you just have done these multiple things over the course of time at the university. And I think when you became dean, you knew, okay, I bring my talents to the table. And yet, how do I continue to expand and grow as a leader? And that's one of the things that we're going to look at and talk about in your interview today, because the way that you collaborate with other people, the way that you invite your people to bring their best forward and empower them are part of the skills that you bring forward anyway. Yet you were like, how can I work with a coach and expand that? So, as we look at, all the different things you do and how coaching impacts that, I want to start with just saying, thanks, because not everybody is like, yeah, let me talk about my coaching. And you were like, yeah, let's talk about my coaching. So what was it when when I said, do you want to do this? You were like, yes. What motivated you to say, yes, I want to talk about this?
So I'd been at the university for multiple years before I stepped into the role of dean. But my leadership journey has been really interesting as far as I never had formal leadership training until probably about 3 or 4 years before I came became dean. The previous dean was a big advocate about going to leadership training and doing all those different things. And I feel like in that process, I was getting bits and pieces to add to my toolbox, but I was trying to figure out how do I bring it all together as a new dean, replacing the dean that became the president of the university. So I had very big shoes
Big
to
shoes.
fill. And how do I make sure that I'm doing the right thing for the whole school? Because, I've been at the university over 23 years now. So how do I make sure that I take on this new role? And I have to throw in, if you think back 4 years ago, I was hired in May 1st was my first day, 2020. So we all know in 2020 what we were going through at that time. And so I just felt like I needed something to help me, a glue to pull all of these things together to help me as I started this journey as being a dean. I the previous dean, who her name is Dr. Lori Rice Spearman, she had brought on an executive coach right before when she was actually applying for a provost position. She was only in that role for, I think, a week before she was our interim president. But I remember asking her, now, what's an executive coach and what does that do? And what is this? I've never heard this term before. And I thought that was interesting too, that I had been to all of these leadership trainings, but I had never heard about an executive coach. So she shared with me what her coach was helping prepare her for the provost role. And I thought, well, if a coach can help her prepare for the provost role, surely a coach can help me prepare for this new dean role. And we have a really nice gentleman that has helped us here at the Health Sciences Center. His name is Steve Soslin. And I reached out to him and said, I'm really interested in a coach. And he said, let me give you a couple of names, and you're going to go and interview them and see which one fits your personality. I have a feeling which one's going to, but I'm not going to tell you which one. And so you were the first one that I reached out to. And I think within 5 minutes, I knew this is the person that's going to help me with this journey. And you've been phenomenal. I could not do my job. I really don't think I would be as efficient in this role if I did not have you as a coach.
Well, thank you for that. So, a couple things based upon what you said. First of all, that fabulous Steve Soslin has actually been a guest on this show. And so, in the show notes, we'll put his episode number because it's definitely one to lean into, all about like a values culture in
Yes.
organizations. And isn't that right up his alley? I mean, and the other thing that I want to explore with you, if you're open to it, is the concept of rising within an organization to leadership. Because I think in some ways there are um, things that maybe enhance that experience for you, but also some detractors potentially. I mean, sometimes when when we're growing within an organization, people might not value our leadership because we're a peer or we're so you had to overcome all of that through your rising. And so that's one thing I want to lean into, like how does one grow as a leader within their organization? And the other thing that we're going to get to, so I'm just laying it all out for you right now. And yes, coaches, I'm stacking my questions for Dondra. The other thing that I want to lean into is how big your school is and how you have to you're definitely sandwiched in a lot of people below you, some key people above you, and how you navigate that. But if it's okay with you, let's start with, what's it like to rise in leadership through 20 plus years in an organization? And how do you gain the respect of people who used to be maybe even above you that now you're above, and colleagues that were peers and now you lead them? And I mean, that's a lot. So what mindset does that take?
Well, I think and you hit all of the things, right? Because, and we talk about this a lot even within our school now, the value of internal candidates as they rise and the value of external candidates that come in. And so that was definitely something that I was thinking about when I took on this role. But to be honest, my journey began in a true leadership position almost by default. And I say that in the best way possible because we did not have it was a kind of a downward time when we were having applications for the occupational therapy program, and I almost felt like I got that position by default because there were only 3 or 4 of us left in the program. But I took it as an opportunity to grow. But I've always approached every growth opportunity as a team. So I know that I'm not ever going to do it individually. I'm never going to make the same difference that I could as a team. And that's actually one of our values is one team. And so it was one of these things where it's like, how do we rally everybody and how do we get through this together? And so I feel like that's what helped me grow. I also try really hard to listen to other people's ideas because I cannot create all of the ideas and all of the growth. And people have really great ideas. But I also knew I had to create a culture where it's okay if we try your idea and it doesn't work. It's maybe failing, but as our president says, as long as we fail forward, then we're okay. And so being able to take risks. So I'm probably a leader that takes a few more risks than maybe some other leaders, but I always feel like there's something to learn in the story, whether the risk is super successful or it's a failure. We're failing forward, and we learn something in that process. So for me, it's always been kind of this one team effort. And then I've also just part of my personality is curiosity. And so I'm always wondering, like, what are some additional things I can take on? I don't want to get bored in this role. I don't want to burn out, but what are some additional things I can learn that I can take on? And as the leadership journey progressed, and the previous dean was able to give us leadership opportunities and then leadership training, I just realized like I've never had any formal leadership training. Did not until I stepped into an assistant dean role in the actual dean's office. Was the first time I'd have ever had the training. So it can be really overwhelming to go to those leadership conferences. And so how do I take one or two things, come back and apply those? And then when I go to another leadership training, how can I take a different concept and apply it? And so I always felt like I was always wanting to learn what's another thing I can do in this position. So I was always asking what's another opportunity. That was what Dr. Ross Spearman would always say, I'm giving you an opportunity. And we would chuckle about it because I always knew what that meant. It was never going to be easy. But little did I know that she was giving me so many skills to help prepare me for the next role. And so that was what was important. But I feel like it's always been about being able to get the team together to work towards the same mission or the same vision. And then the challenge becomes when you do get in the role, not everyone was probably thrilled that I got the position just because you're never going to please everyone. But
Right.
then how do you get those people to work together to understand we're all trying to get to the same place together? And the truth be known, there were some people that weren't on board. And so how do you help work through that process in a leadership position? And maybe not necessarily because of me, but maybe with the values-based culture and all of the things that were coming on for our university as well as our school. And also, to be honest, I believe in growing people for the next opportunity. I would love for it to be in our university and in our school, but the truth is that sometimes it's not available there, and you have to
Mhm.
help them to go and to be prepared for the next opportunity externally too. So those are just some of the things that come to mind.
So I know that the coaches who are listening are like, Meg, what a golden client you have. I mean, like, you said I've helped you tremendously. I don't know. I think you came to the table with a plethora of strengths and experiences. But even with those strengths and experiences, what are some of the things that working with a coach has done how does that help to bridge some gaps for you?
I think what's been really helpful is you, Meg, you're a neutral party for me. So you are coming at it and you're helping me problem solve the situation. You're not telling me what to do. And I've always appreciated that about you. You're helping me figure out what is the best way to get to this solution for this particular problem, but we do it through a series of questions, and you help me to think about things that I never had even considered prior to our sitting down and meeting. And, it's always funny to me because people will say, well, oh, so you're just going to have a coach for like a year. And I'm like, no, I'm going to have Meg forever because there's always something that comes up that I need someone to just brainstorm with me a minute or two or an hour, however long it takes us to brainstorm through that, and then I feel more confident. And I think what you've done for me as a coach is sometimes I don't have all of the information. And I don't realize I don't have all of the information until you start asking me questions, not giving me solutions right away. You start asking me questions, and I start to realize, wow, there's one more thing I need to go check out before I make this decision, or I need to think about this. I mean, there have been times that you've even proofread things for me that have been very helpful. as far as my communication with another person, whether it's someone that's in higher administration that I need to communicate with, or whether it's just someone that's, one of my coworkers. But you've told me, well, that's kind of strong language, or maybe you thought about saying it this way? And so it can be something as small as that, but we know that sometimes that communication can be huge if it comes across wrong. And so I just feel like you've been there to kind of guide me. And every week, every day, I have different things that fall on my plate, that might need a different skill set. A lot of times I feel confident in it, but it just still helps to have someone to, just to kind of brainstorm. And am I thinking about this in the right way? And you've helped me to grow because I feel like I think about a lot of different perspectives now. Whereas before, I feel like I came with more limited my perceptions, right? But there's so much more than my perceptions.
So I love the fact that, it's in this place of let's just meet where we're at and explore, right? And that's really what coaching is all about. When we talk about the fact that you were in this huge school, like, isn't it one of the biggest schools in your area? Like,
Yes, we are the biggest school.
I
So we have
thought so.
yes, so we have 2,000 students, approximately, and we have approximately 175 full-time employees, and then we have probably 100 adjunct employees. So, and we run pretty lean with our faculty and our staff, but they're so fabulous. I work with the most amazing people. I have to give them a plug. I always tell them, "You make me look good," because they're just incredible at what they do, and they love the school, they love the students, they love each other, and so it just makes for a really great environment, to be able to lead, and we've got some great leaders in our school, that's the other thing.
Well, and I think you lead by example a lot, and let people kind of know. I think you're clear in expectations, and then believe that people can bring their strengths to meet those expectations. So one of the things that you do with these people that you're sandwiched between is you practice what you preach, and that you've reached out to me and said, "There's some people that I would like to offer a coach to. Who might you recommend, or who?" So we could, so it's not just that you're saying I value coaching, but you're saying I value coaching and would recommend it for other people, other leaders on my team. And what sort of led you to believe that, this is something that I want to offer as well?
Well, people in my past have invested in me and in my professional journey, whether it was leadership, whether it was obtaining more skills. There were a lot of people that invested in me. And I think that it's important to pay it forward. And I feel like at first, whenever I had you as a coach, I was like, this is the best kept secret ever. But it really shouldn't be a secret, right? It should be something that we share. And so it's been interesting because I don't offer it, I don't just announce it to everyone and say,
Right.
"Hey, if you want to coach," because I feel like it's a personal journey. And I feel like it's one of those things where I want people to come to me and say either, "Hey, what can I do with my leadership journey?" or "How can I go from here?" And so depending on the situation, I've offered, the coaching and then reached out to you. We have some internal coaching available to us, but I really found value with you in that you weren't part of the organization. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the coaches
I
that are
totally get that.
internally in an organization. I think they definitely serve a role. But for me, it's been really helpful to have someone that's external of the organization. So I'm very careful. We have some people that have used internal coaches in our school. And then there's some that I'm like, I really think we need to go externally for what you're trying to do in your growth journey as a leader. And so I just believe in paying it forward. We have some money set aside for development for our team members. And so we use that money and that development to help grow our team members. And just to me, coaching is just one of the big things that's really beneficial.
So good. And as you have checked back with people, I know you're letting them have their coaching be confidential to them, but any feedback that you're getting, or changes that you're seeing based upon some of the coaching, just the availability of coaching that you're making for your
Oh,
team?
they've all come back to me and said, thank you, my coach is fabulous. This has really helped me. Or we'll be in a situation where we're talking about something. I have one-on-one meetings with everyone that I supervise, and they'll bring up a situation, and I can tell they're still trying to kind of think through it. And I'm really big on, as a leader, saying, well, what would you do in this? What do you want to do in this? What do you think you would like to do in this situation? And then I try to help support. But there's times where I feel like they need a little bit more than what the guidance I can provide, and they need to someone else to ask some questions, because I think we have to be careful as leaders that we don't expect a response of what they think we would do. Because
And there's an inherent value, right?
yes,
Like you're my leader. I'm looking to see, do I say something that lights you up? Are you excited? And I have all sorts of my own story going on inside, right? So
right.
I'm making assumptions about what you're thinking. So those outside eyes and outside ears can sometimes be helpful, huh?
Exactly. And so then I'll say, hey, this would be a great thing to bring up with your coach. And they're like, oh yeah, this would be a great topic. And then I have some that have topics they're going to be meeting with their coaches for years, because there's a lot of topics and a lot of growth opportunities. But they've all come back to me and thanked me for the opportunity, and I'm so excited to see their growth. And it's funny because they'll do something and they'll get really excited and they'll say, oh, I worked with my coach on this skill, and oh my gosh, listen to what I did this week, and they get
Oh,
so excited
that
about it. And I'm
gets
like,
me excited.
and not that it's a cop out, but sometimes even I try to tell my team, well, I was working with my coach, and this is something that we're working on together. If you see me do this, or if there's something I can do different, please help me. But I also think it's that transparency piece of, I'm still growing as a leader. I'll be growing for the rest of my life, hopefully, as a leader. And so, but it's that transparency of, my coach is helping me with this. I'm working on this. If you see me do this, could you let me know, and just being, and I think that's part of one team and coming together and holding each other accountable. It's not my job to hold you accountable. It's everyone's job to hold each other accountable, including me.
Love that. So one of the things so I just have to say this came up to me so clearly while Dondra was just talking. I was at a workshop this weekend. I was at a conference, and one of the speakers was talking about the different kinds of clients you have. And she was talking about the clients that you have that you wished you could just clone them and have all of your clients be those clients. Dondra is one of those perfect
Aw.
clients. Like when you talk, when you every you are what I strive to help people be, in that we're stretching, we're thinking, we're applying, we're asking people. This is what I'm working on with my coach. So therefore, if you see me fall into an old pattern, please let me know, because I'm working on new patterns. When you were talking about that, I was like, oh my gosh, don't we all want to clone? And that's exactly kind of what we want to do and what we want to work on. So thank you for that. Um, we were talking about what are some of the questions that I ask that are helpful to you. And one of the things you said to me before we started was, what are you telling yourself at this moment? What is it about that question that helps you sometimes when you're feeling stuck?
Oh, I would say that's probably been one of the biggest things. I always laugh, and you'll probably laugh at this too, but I always say, I hear Meg in my head saying, so before there was a story that I told myself in my head, and a lot of times it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about I didn't have all the information, or it was just my perception, or it was my story, which we all know those stories come with baggage. I mean, right? There's so much that goes on with those stories that we tell ourselves in our head. But now, instead of me just hearing the story play on real, I hear you saying, what are you telling yourself right now? And what is the story? And is that story accurate? And what else do you need? I hear all these questions now that helps me to disrupt whatever's going on in my head. Because, I mean, we could buy into that and then make some pretty poor choices based on the story that we're telling ourselves in our head. So that's been a game changer for me. And I've also used that when I'm talking to other people. I'll say, what are you telling yourself right now? Or what are you thinking right now? Or what's the story that's going on in your, and really is something that makes them less defensive and makes them go, "Oh, well," and when they verbalize it or they say it out loud, they hear either how silly it might sound, or they might go, "Oh, wait, that doesn't make sense, does it?" But it was a tool that you taught me that then I can use every day, but it's a tool I use probably daily. I mean, in so many, and not just work. I think we've talked a lot about work today, but I mean, even outside of work in my personal life, with my family, with my friends. I mean, just that thought of what am I telling myself right now in this moment? And is it accurate? And is it my perception versus, do I need a little more information or just to stop the story? Sometimes I just need to stop the story and move on and then realize that it wasn't even necessarily necessary in the first place.
Because it's not serving me. And then we begin to realize what's going on between my I can control that. I mean, like it's all in a way made up anyway. So what's the thing that I'm going to look at or the evidence that I can find to support something different? Love that.
Like,
So if people are listening and they're like, well, what should I consider working with a coach? What would you say if they're kind of struggling with, well, why would I want to work with a coach?
I would say, I mean, why not? Why not work with a coach? And of course, I would say absolutely, you should work with a coach. I believe in it enough that I teach in the post professional program, and I teach occupational therapists that have been out for years. And I believe in it enough that we actually talk about executive coaching in my class and how important it is. And I've had several students that have gone on to get coaches and then emailed me and said, "Wow, this was a game changer." But I think it's the idea too of you're not locked in. I mean, you get to interview whoever you think will be a good fit for you, so you're not going to be just given a name and said, "Here, you're stuck with them." If your
Right.
personalities don't mesh or if you don't feel like they're going to be beneficial, there's other coaches out there. So I would say find the right fit for you and then
Mhm.
just try it. Try it for 3 months. Commit to 3 or 6 months and then just see. And I feel like those 3 or 6 months, if you're with the right coach, will inspire you to continue with the coaching. That's how much of a difference I feel like coaching's made for me. I feel like it's made me leaps and bounds a better leader than I was before I started with you and with coaching.
So good. So one of Dondra's favorite things that she says is, "How do you live without a coach?" I said to her, "Oh my gosh, that's probably going to need to be the title for this episode. How do you live without a coach?"
Well,
Um,
I don't have to worry about that, right? Because that is my mantra. I mean, I don't know how it did. And every time I see Steve, I'm like, "Steve, thank you so much for introducing me to Meg." I know he's like, "Dondra, can we talk about someone other than Meg every time I see you?" But that's just how important it's been to have you as part of this journey.
Well, that just warms my heart. One of the things I want to just as we're getting close to wrap up, emphasize that you said is that being a leader, people get promoted often to leadership because they're really good at whatever they do. So they might be a good individual contributor, or they might be a great instructor, or they might be whatever it is, whatever realm they're in, they're tagged, and it's often to reward them or to let them know how much their work is appreciated, but that doesn't mean that they know how to lead. That means that they're good at whatever they've done. So getting leadership training, like you said, getting that professional development, and often having outside eyes, outside ears, or even, just a different perspective to ask those questions, to explore what else is possible, to open that lens a little bit can be super helpful. So, as we're closing out, I'm just wondering what your final thoughts are that you want people to know about your journey, or about you, and what they should take away from this.
I just think I think about how much more effective I could have been in my earlier leadership journey had I had known about executive coaching. It's kind of like when you know better, you do better. And I feel like I was very task oriented and very just get through this, and I always was a team person. So I think that's what probably helped me. But it's how do you put it all together with some of the leadership, ideas that are out there, and how do you really come to the table being the best version of yourself as a leader? And I just think that you've got to have that voice of reason. That's what I call you, Meg, my voice of reason. You have to have that person that really is going to make you look internally at yourself and help you to grow. And sometimes we're surrounded by people that don't want to give us maybe some, constructive feedback or criticism or whatever it is that you want to label it. But we're not going to grow if everyone just tells us how great we are all the time. We're only going to grow when we go through those really difficult times and we have those people to help us to stop, look, look at your toolbox. What other skills do you need in there? And then how do you move forward with what you've got? And I just feel like that's what a coach does is they help you pull some of those tools out of your toolbox and put them together to build the foundation that you need to continue to grow as a leader.
Thank you for being willing to share your experience, to spend time with me because you know I love spending time with you, and to just maybe challenge all of us to think about how are we growing, how are we stretching, what are the resources that we're using, and is there maybe something more that we can do to show up as our best. So, Dr. Dondra Seacrest, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's been a pleasure, Meg. Always a pleasure.